Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you're tuning in. We are Slava and Jonathan, bringing you the Side Quest podcast, where we talk about character development, stories, and all things that are world building. And we occasionally take side quests, because, frankly, that's how conversations work. Just as a reminder, this whole show is spoiler heavy. So sit back, tune in, and join us on this episode of Side Quest.
Good afternoon, adventurers. We have another special episode with Jess coming in to discuss the book It with us.
Hello.
Great to see you again, Jess.
You're not going to call us losers?
I mean, I call you a loser all the time. I try to be respectful to our guests.
I count. I definitely count as a loser.
All right, then. Hey, losers. What's up?
Doing a podcast and all.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
How are you, Jonathan?
I'm well. Just trying to catch up on my MBA. Just a normal, average, busy week.
Yeah, this week has been bland for me. I don't know, just a whole lot of nothing going on.
You sent me a picture of yourself in AI. That was bland to you? An AI image of yourself?
Yeah, that's how bored I was. I was making AI images of myself.
How did you do that?
I have an app that makes AI images, so I paid for the service for a lifetime.
Oh, the one that won't let me back in?
The one that won't let you back in. So I uploaded a picture of myself playing on my phone, so it was like very meta. It was me uploading myself to a phone with a picture of me on the phone, probably scrolling Instagram. And I said, change this to a comic book character, and it gave me a blonde goatee. I look like
weird.
That's really weird, yeah.
I kind of want to see. Can they do your body too?
Yeah, they can do the whole thing.
Cool.
You just tell it specifically what you want it to do to your picture. It'll do it.
No, I got to see this picture.
After this episode, I'll share.
I'll laugh at it. Okay.
Yeah, it's certainly something.
Indeed.
But I got a question for you guys. What's your fondest childhood memory? Since we're discussing it, and it's got this very strong childhood theme.
It wouldn't be a specific one. I had told Slava earlier that it would be the beginning, because I heard the one question you said, the end of school year. I never look forward to the end of the school year. I always look forward to the beginning of the school year.
Oh.
Like new notebooks, reading. Although I was very, very shy. This is like an elementary school. I think my grandparents, time I spent with my grandparents, was probably my fondest childhood memories.
Mm-hmm.
Especially now, because I only have one left. And they were very good storytellers, especially like my foreign grandparents.
Foreign?
So like listening to stories, yeah. My grandmother was from Germany or Hungary. It's unclear. I'm not sure which one she was born in. They fled the country. Same thing with my grandfather. They were just very good storytellers. So spending time with them.
Love a good storyteller. A grandparent who's a storyteller. That's awesome. Jealous.
I can't think of one particular memory either. I have very scattered memories of my childhood, but similar to Jess, I have like a thing that I did or a time period in childhood. And it was usually after school or even during the summer when school let out, and it also involved all the books, spending time in the library. That's why I said during some of the episodes, I really resonate with Ben thinking of the library as a sanctuary, because that's where I would hang out.
Same.
And I would read books and magazines and everything in between. Young adult, Stephen King. I read architecture books. I read cooking books. You name it, I would just explore the library. And sometimes books that I didn't understand what I was reading, probably, psychology books or whatever it was. I couldn't tell you. I don't remember. But I remember perusing all the sections. So that always stood out to me later on, like in high school in my 20s, as very fond memories. And now that I had to think of an answer for this question, this came back right away.
Yeah, definitely reading was my primary childhood hobby. I was known for it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I wasn't just hanging out in libraries. I also would hide there to avoid lunch.
Huh.
Yeah. Because of, again, the loser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my fondest childhood memories is I won a bike once. You know those grocery store, put your name in the box and they're going to draw it and you win something? I won a bike before.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was in 6th grade, and tying it with the story here, it was an adult bike, so I couldn't reach the pedals, just like silver. And so I had to tape these 2x4 blocks just so that I could reach the pedals.
That seems dangerous.
Put 2 before blocks and just wrapped it with duct tape so that I could actually reach the pedals because I was too short.
Wow. That's
It's creative.
ingenious in a way.
Well, you win a bike, you're like, I want to ride this bike.
Yeah.
You know? So I just remembered that with this question.
All right, Bill.
Yeah, Big Bill. You can call me Big Bill from now on, Slava. Big Bill. Oh, it won't let me change my name while we're recording. All right, I'll change it later.
Yeah.
Big Bill.
So, Big Bill, what are we doing today?
Well, let's do a full recap of it like we normally do. I want to get Jess's thoughts on everything here. But before we dive in, you adventurers, you know what time it is. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a side quest.
Over the last 4 episodes or so, 5 episodes, we went to Derry, Maine, and we went back in time to 1957 to a small city, a place hauntingly familiar as your own hometown. Only in Derry, the haunting is real, and it feeds on those who live there. We met Big Bill, Bev, Mike, Stan the Man, Eddie, Richie the trash-mouthed Tozer, and Ben. They were 7 teenagers, or almost teenagers, when they first stumbled upon the horror that resides under Derry. And together these kids find solace and kinship when the murder of Georgie, the little brother of Big Bill, sets off a chain of events. It leads to the formation of the Losers Club, a club of 7 outcasts from all walks of life who form a friendship over their shared experiences, including those with it, the entity from ago that terrorizes the town. Eventually, the losers face their fears, they fight it, and force it deep down under Derry, promising to come back if it ever does. Then we meet them again in 1985. Now, they are grown-up men and women who have gone on into the big world to gain success and happiness. But the promise they made 28 years ago calls them to reunite in the same place where they battled an evil creature that preyed on the city's children. Now, children are being murdered again, and their repressed memories of that terrifying summer return as they prepare to once again battle the monster lurking in Derry sewers. They return for one more cataclysmic fight with it and watch as their hometown is destroyed by an apocalyptic flood and an earthquake. And constant and astute readers of Stephen King know that Derry, Maine is the place with a deep, dark hold on its author and its citizens. It reappears, the town, in many of his books, including Bag of Bones, Hearts in Atlantis, and 11/22/63. But it all starts long ago and far away.
Mm-hmm. That's a good recap. So, Jess, have you read it before?
No. Before reading the book, I actually said I was never going to watch the movies. And I did watch them, but I fell asleep during both of them, which was good. Because I didn't want to incorporate anything from that into the book. And there's something later, like we'll bring, like the thing we were talking earlier that we'll bring up, that was in the movie and not, and I don't find it to be in the book. I definitely agreed with you on, I feel like you didn't say the length wasn't an issue, thing that I didn't like about it. But I feel like a lot of those run-ins with it did get kind of, not redundant.
Yeah.
Well, it, like you also said, everything in the book served a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there weren't really a lot of details that didn't, have a purpose. So, I understand why. But because of certain things I wanted to get to, because it was so engaging, and then, like, he gives you, like, little breadcrumbs of things, like the turtle. That was driving me nuts.
Yeah.
I want more information. It's so barely in the first 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
Of the explanation. And that's when I started to get a little annoyed. That's like a criticism.
Yeah. Well, you and Jonathan both.
I agree. Yeah. I was like, Slava told me about it, and I was like, cool, where is it?
Yeah.
Where's the turtle?
I kind of think I missed something.
Yeah, same.
I've heard complaints from people online and in other podcasts I've listened to that King spent, just 2 or 3 pages longer than he needed to on X. So other people have the same complaints. Yeah, maybe. Sure, maybe he could have cut that out. But to me, it propels the story along. Kind of a tease almost.
I do agree, because once you get to the explanation, I was like, okay, it was maybe not worth the wait, but had I just picked up this book and not had to read it, I'd hope I wouldn't have not finished it because I was annoyed.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Because now that I'm older, I don't tend to finish a book I hate if I just can't get through it. Like,
Yep.
there was a book that you and I think we both picked up, Slava, that people have been recommending, The Maidens. You had a copy of it. I could only read a chapter. I'm like, this is awful.
Put it on the list.
It had like a lady, I feel like it's like a Roman lady's face on the cover. You definitely have had it in your house. I have it in my house. I was going to give it to a friend because I'm just not going to finish it.
Yeah. A book by Alex Michael Delis.
The Silent Patient he wrote that. It was a good thriller, but I couldn't reread it. It's not a book you can reread. It's like a mindless thriller. Like some thrillers I don't find them to be mindless. And I feel like if they had made it longer, I feel that way about Sharp Objects. It's a book by the woman who wrote Gone Girl. Gillian Flynn or Gillian Flynn? I thought Sharp Objects was beautifully written. But it made a great limited series TV show. You haven't seen it.
No, I haven't seen it.
It's depressing. Very
depressing. Oh, good.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing. I love unlikable people in stories, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jess and I share the same affinitude. Affinitude? Is that the word?
It was
affinity.
Yeah.
We share an affinity for unlikable, dark,
scumbags.
Bad guys. Yeah, scumbags.
I love scumbags.
Right to the point. Yep.
All right. Fair enough.
Oh, but the scumbags in this story are too awful.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone's just evil.
Yeah. Blatantly
like Patrick
evil.
Hockstetter. Is that his name? Hockstetter? I was happy when he died.
Yeah.
I was like, cool.
Yeah.
Only death I don't care about. He deserved it.
And the fact that he died pretty gruesomely was like, yep, this is what you get for murdering animals in a refrigerator, you psychopath.
And your baby brother.
Yeah.
I was worried that I wouldn't be able to read that part because we already had the part with Henry Bowens or Bowers? Henry Bowers with the dog. Killing that dog.
Oh, dude, that pissed me off.
I know.
Oh.
That was like, I was so worried that part was going to be even worse. But it wasn't as, I feel like, detailed of the infant suffering or anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was weird to read his mindset.
Oh, yeah.
Like, didn't know anyone else was real but him.
Yeah.
That was creepy.
Yeah, clinical psychopath.
Yeah.
Super psychopathic. Like, who, like, where does he, as a kid, where does he get this thought, this belief, right? Like, besides, from it itself. But I don't know.
Because Henry was kind of, a product of his home life in Derry. But like, even if he wasn't in Derry, that kid he would have ended up messed up.
Oh yeah,
person probably in some sort of facility, or he was in an asylum. Was it an asylum?
Yeah. Juniper Hill in the King universe is the asylum in Maine, where all the kooky people go.
Oh, and all the other books.
Yeah, and a lot of other books too.
I like that. I do like that when authors have their own universe.
Yep, King does. Juniper Hill is the insane asylum, which is around here. The two towns that he writes mostly about is Derry and Castle Rock, when he writes about Maine.
Mm-hmm.
And the book also references a car. Hofstadter picks up Henry Bowers in a car. The make and model is the same as Christine, which is the title of a book about a supernatural car.
Mm-hmm.
That it gets a hold of its driver, I think. If I remember the plot correctly, I haven't read it. But it takes a supernatural hold of its driver.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But Jess, if you like authors who weave things together throughout their books, I don't know if Slava's told you about Brandon Sanderson, but he weaves stuff through his various books that are all tied to a larger narrative that you have to piece together outside the books.
Oh, I feel like you were talking about that in the one episode.
Probably, yeah.
Where, you said you kind of have to wait to figure.
Yeah.
Where Stephen King doesn't really do that.
Yeah, with the interludes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Sanderson. So if you like that it's fantasy, but it's worth the read.
Are they all 1,000 pages long? Because I feel like fantasy.
No, not all of them, but there is one series that is.
Yeah.
Each book is that.
I recommend Warbreaker. Good starter for Brandon Sanderson.
That one's a pretty easy read. Fun magic system too. But let's dive back into it here. Did you have any favorite character, Jess?
Mike Hamlin, because I feel like he had to stand. I don't know. I not a martyr. He's not a martyr, but like that he stayed and suffered, and he was like he was so aged from it.
Mm-hmm.
He like was the keeper of all the knowledge. I like that. This like figure in the library late at night, keeping these horrible notes. Everyone else gets to forget, but he has to stay there and suffer and live it.
Yeah.
I think that's why that's why I was upset when he was in the hospital.
I honestly, so I caught a theme early on. I didn't mention this to Slava, but you've got the kids each have their own specific names, but 3 of them are names that start with a B. And so I was expecting all the kids whose names weren't starting with a B to die, but they didn't.
Oh.
Because, it's based on the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. So I was like, oh, he'll probably just kill the other 4 kids, 4, 7, right? Yeah, 7?
7.
At first, I had issues keeping track of their names. I think you said that too, Jonathan.
Yeah.
They're like
tough.
very American names, I guess. The bullies had a little bit more distinct names.
Yeah.
I feel like. Except for Henry. Henry fits in with the other names. I think I was getting Henry mixed up with Mike, and then I was like, why is he doing this?
Well, I also think it's because we had like Bill and Bev did this thing with Ben, and it's just like you have all of the names together, whereas when it's Henry or Patrick, like they're kind of off doing their own thing. So there's more separation there.
Yeah, I think it's Bill and Ben I got mixed up the most. It took me a second to be, Ben Hanscom. I think that's why I know their last names.
Yeah.
Or I could keep track of them. Ben, I guess, was probably the one I relate to the most, other than the fatness. Not that I haven't been a binge eater before, but I was very aware when I was doing it that I was, and I wasn't 12. But like the hiding in the library part, like only because I do voices in the privacy of my home.
Oh, really? That sounds like something you should share with the audience.
No. I thought about that. I was worried about bringing that up. But my daughter gets to enjoy that. All my animals have like their own voices. My daughter thinks they don't fit one of the cats.
Oh, yeah?
Everybody's a critic.
Everyone's a critic. I was just thinking that. Everyone's a critic.
And I can kind of imitate certain people. 2 people that Slava knows. But if I'm sick, I can't do some of them because they're high-pitched nasally people.
Okay.
That we worked with.
Fun. That's fun.
I would say Ben. I like the character of Ben a lot because I identified with being a loner and having the library as a sanctuary. Richie, in the sense that later on I developed gallows humor and smart ass kind of attitude. So Richie for those reasons. But other than that, the rest of them, I liked them. I liked all of them. Bev, Mike, Eddie, Stan, for all their different reasons. I didn't feel any affinity for them, to use that word again.
Well, Richie, I do like that there's some part where he talks about like harnessing, like for me, I have racing thoughts. So like, I like the idea that channeling that into something else creatively as an outlet, which they all kind of did. They all kind of channeled their stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that for all of them, their imagination, those kid laws, aspects of the world that they occupy, all that helps them not only maneuver the waters of childhood with adults and bullies, but ultimately with it. That channeling is what helps them to beat it. And it's actually Richie that saves Bill from the deadlights.
Mm-hmm.
Richie's a good number 2, and then you have Eddie, who's the navigator, Bev, who's the crack shot, Mike, the historian, Stan, the rational one. You have these characteristics that all really work well together. They make him a cohesive group. And that's when Stan takes him out of the equation, himself out of the equation. Mike thinks, well, can we do it? We're no longer a group.
Right. Jess, what did you think about the controversial sex scene?
Oh, I given it a lot of thought because that's the part I was like really not looking forward to. That does not sound good. Or as I call it, the kid orgy.
No, definitely not the way you want to say that.
But it was not at all what I expected because, Slava, you said King writes sex well, and there were, sex scenes in the book. And I can't even remember if I read all of the Stand when I was way too young, so I had to like sneak read it. But I only remembered sex from like small things of that book that were sex related. So I assumed it was going to be a very sexual scene, which it isn't. I think it makes sense for the book. It is an odd way, but I like transgressive elements in books. Not shocking for the sake of shocking, but it served a purpose. And it was approached the way a 12-year-old would approach it.
Right.
That's part of it.
Mhm.
They are all, well, not that I'm pro kids having sex, but like Bev initiates it, which changes the whole thing. I thought it was going to be kind of like more of a group activity where they all came to her individually,
Mhm.
and like she had to coax them into it, assure them it was okay, and and obviously it came to her from that intuition thing that they have to do this. And what I said to Slava is only a kid, because it's like the kid magic and the kid, only a kid thinks sex makes you an adult.
That's fair.
That's the loss of innocence, maybe, but also for whatever reason we act like that's the gateway into adulthood, which definitely isn't true because I feel like it's usually the most immature kids who have sex first
Right.
in
Mhm.
some ways.
What I said to Jonathan in the episode you couldn't listen to because it's not edited yet, but what I said to him, and I told you this right before we started recording, is not only does it fit the book, it fits Bev's character in the sense that she comes from a very abusive home that has a weird sexual element to it, right? Her dad is obsessed with her being intact, meaning a virgin, and he's also upset that she's grown up. And it's revealed that he does have some sort of weird feelings for her. Now, granted, it tells us that.
That's what confused me, who to blame it on, but it was already there and it like exacerbates it, like preys upon that. And she said
Yeah.
that during that scene.
Exactly. And kids who come from abusive homes or have traumatic experiences as kids sometimes, oftentimes, I should say, experiment with sex, not even knowing why they're doing it. It's just kind of like a almost instinctive because, and that instinct is awakened by that trauma. So to me, I don't think it was necessary. I mean, I maybe write it a different way. I don't know, because it is kids having sex. I understand the people who are put off by it, but it kind of fits the book and the character at the same time. So I'm okay. He wrote it. Here we are. What are we going to do about it?
It wasn't tittillating. It's not erotic in any way.
Mhm.
And because it's also consensual, there was one book, I think it's All the Ugly and Wondrous Things. I couldn't finish it. It's been a while, so I'm probably destroying the plot. I don't remember the plot too much. Older man, overly interested in like a child, like again, about younger than the loser's age or about their age. Noticing her developing body. I remember at one point that I just couldn't read anymore because I knew it was sexual and he was sexualizing her in the head. But like, see, and that book got a lot of recognition, and I was like, well, how is that okay?
Yeah.
Because it seemed a little more sexual, or this didn't feel sexual.
I have a friend who says the elites are always wrong. What he means by that is you'll have these people who go to the right schools, who are part of think tanks and put out thought pieces. And a lot of times they're so separated from reality that they sound like lunatics. And they sometimes force countries and even the world into disastrous situations or push it into disastrous situation. Whereas if you ask a question of an uneducated farmer from Maine, he might have more wisdom than this philosopher of sorts.
Of how it like plays out in real life. It's
Yeah,
you can have many social theories or ideas of how things are, but they play out differently. Everything's way more nuanced.
yeah,
Like there's easy to oversimplify things.
right. And I think this applies here. It's not a one-to-one, but it does apply here. So you have a book like It, written by a popular author, not necessarily what a lot of critics would say is high literature. And it gets poo-pooed on easily because there's a sex kid scene in here. But somebody who is part of this, I'm not trying to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but part of this elite group, whatever that group is, part of this circle of writers, and they write a book with overtly sexual themes and kids involved in the sexual escapades of the book. And people applaud it because, oh, wow, it's so, so out there, so controversial. It's a new thing. And people applaud it because it's their guy writing it, I think.
Yeah, controversial for controversial's sake, and they're like, "This is incredible." It's like, no, it's drivel actually, but okay.
Book Sarah by J.T. Leroy. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-mm.
Oh, it's so interesting. You guys gotta look. It's like a literary hoax. The author presented herself through another person as to be. It's so hard to explain, but she kind of presented it as it was her life, but she made it into fiction. But the whole thing is a child prostitute boy who's dressed up like a girl And it's so inappropriate. The author is just this woman. JT Leroy doesn't exist. She got celebrity status. Like, she was hanging out with, like, Hollywood's elite. Billy Corgan was who she told that she was JT Leroy to.
Wow.
Or the Smashing Pumpkins. I don't know if that you knew who it was.
Yeah. Sarah is a novel by Laura Albert, written in the name JT Leroy.
That's her real name.
A persona that has been described as an avatar.
But she didn't explain that to anyone. This woman used this abuse story of this person, and everyone thought the author had gone through that. But she went through her own trauma, though. She was sexually abused.
Mm-hmm.
How she portrayed herself makes it kind of fraudulent. People were kind of tricked.
Yeah, kind of the old bait and switch. That's an interesting ethical issue. You write a story like that, and I haven't read it, so I'm just kind of taking the plot points from you. But you write a story like that, and then people are like, oh my gosh, did you go through that? Like, I don't know if anyone blatantly asked her the question, but even if it was implied, you should really go, oh, well, I didn't go through that. I went through other things, but like, I mean...
She did, but she was using a voice to sound like the little boy.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird how she broke into the writing industry, because it's not how you do it. I think she was contacting writers, telling them their story, and was like, hey, can I send you something? But they thought she was doing a voice on the phone. And they're like, yeah. So she like faxed this story, and they're like, oh, this is incredible. But they also thought a 15-year-old child who was uneducated had written it. But no, I think it's still it's good writing, even if it's her. So she didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely watch it. There's 2 different documentaries on it. One is way too sympathetic. I like it, but it's too sympathetic on her part. Where the other one shows how she kind of messed with the emotional minds of like the authors that she originally contacted, because they like felt so much for this young boy, like as a son almost, and like sent gifts to her. And I feel like, yeah, it's a weird story because a lot of it was over the phone, how she met all these people.
Wow.
And then celebrity status, her avatar, I think was in Vanity Fair or Vogue. Like being interviewed, like, and I think that was her downfall, was becoming a celebrity. Like because she was always there too, the writer. You got to look into it.
We'll look
Very
into
strange.
It is strange. But also, I think I said for the sex scene, like a slight revelation. I don't know if it's true. Maybe it was a way for her to take back what her father did to her. Like he almost, as it, took her virginity. And instead she shares it with the people that mean the most in the world to her. She said she loved them all.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that also.
I'll end it with this, and we can move on to a new topic. It's what I said to Jonathan. King wrote it. It's here. We can discuss it and talk about it, and here we are. And for a book full of child murder, there's plenty to complain about if you're going to clutch pearls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But anyway, are there any things that you hated about the book? And this is for the both of you, because I read this book a few times, and maybe I'll answer this. I don't think I really have anything that I disliked, but is there anything that stood out as like, I could have done without this? And I'm not talking about content that was offensive or something, just reading it, like you're like, I don't like this part.
I think that there was a few things that annoyed me. They annoyed me, and then it was okay. Bill stuttering. I knew it was going to be the whole book of it, but it annoyed me so much to read. It didn't annoy me as much as Audible, because I listened to some of it on Audible. The book length, I do know I definitely have missed things, because I told you I went back to reread certain parts, and I'm like, oh, now that I've read it, that's foreshadowing. Some I did catch, or I thought I made a guess. It doesn't have a gender, but I was like, oh, it might be female, because they said something fertile. They described it as fertile and something, and child rage was its child. I'm definitely paraphrasing. It was way better written. Oh, yeah. And I really liked, but I won't talk about what I like right now. We're talking about what we hate. And I'm good at finding things to complain about. I don't have a ton to complain about.
I think the only thing that stuck out to me for things that annoyed me was that section where it's going through the phone calls, and it just felt very copy paste, like I said before.
Because they all had the same reaction.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, that's the book. Like, this is about it. It's about drawing them back, and I don't know how to do that a different way. But I think the only way that you could cut that up is if you had different pieces, like if you organized the plot points differently and had those phone calls happen at different points in time. but that would like drastically change the book from the phone call section. So
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer for how you'd fix it, but I did find that to go, okay. Because after the third one, you're like, oh, we're going to do this a bunch of times. Okay, got it. So the new fears, that's interesting. But the, like, and then it shows up. It's like, oh, okay, got it. Yeah.
If I was going to pick something to hate or be annoyed by, I wish we got more in the interludes about it. When we get like a little bit of the POV where it talks how the kids scared it and it felt fear for the first time. If that was explored, I'd be more happy. But that's me saying it, reading it for, like I said, the 7th time or so for a podcast with the expressed intent to discuss it. I never picked up on that in my previous reads. But what I did love, and then we'll go counterclockwise to talk about what we loved. What I loved is how we got POVs of Stan from his wife and POVs of Eddie from his medicine cabinet and POVs of Beverly from a psychotic Tom. It's a very different way of writing. And then you get the awakening of Beverly where she kicks the shit out of Tom. And then you have Eddie not caving in to Myra as he caved into his mother in the hospital, which was very sad for me. Because he stands up to her, he still gets what he wants in regards to staying with the losers, but he caves into her because look at his life went forward. So the intricacies of that, those stories through those POVs, and then propelling the character further into the story, I thought that was absolutely wonderful. That was my favorite part of the book, the way King unravels those things.
Yeah, and also how they start to regain their memory.
Mm-hmm.
I do like how I
liked that aspect.
Yeah. Especially because that kind of was, again, that kind of a breadcrumbing thing, if that's the right word.
Yeah, I think it works.
Someone mentioned, before we get to the scene with Beverly's dad, the chase with her, is about her screaming and a man running into the house, just ignoring her. Like, that was mentioned way above, and I was like, oh, that's got to be it.
And that's what her with Henry Bowers. But still, it doesn't matter. When dad is chasing her, and she's screaming her head off and scared, and she's all dirty from crawling underneath the garbage truck, some guy goes, oh, I guess you're in trouble with your dad. You're going to get a licking.
Yeah, I remember that.
You don't see this as like a problem? Like, I don't care if it's 1834, a kid losing its mind with another adult chasing the kid. Nobody goes, oh, I guess that kid's in trouble. Well, nobody normal. I don't care what the social...
Because I did think about that. The time period, people were really more open with their beating the shit out of their kids.
That's part of it. But you would think that to that extent, somebody, at least one character would go, I hope that girl's okay. But I get this is Derry. That's not even a complaint. I get this is Derry, and King's telling us that Derry is just full of shitheads that are controlled by it. But whatever.
I have a question about Derry. I feel like you guys talked about this, and I don't know if I went back and couldn't figure out what podcast, which number it was. Is the evil contained in Derry? Because it calls Audra, Bill's wife, and it calls Tom from far away. So it can pull, right? And then it had the power.
I asked the same question to Slava.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So here's how.
It's a good question.
It's a very good question. So it landed in the spot where Derry was founded, and it's using Derry as its feeding ground. It controls Derry. It controls its people. It can influence its people, even influence reality. Like people see balloons going against the wind like Ben does. It definitely has a hold on Derry, and it being an entity from ago and outside our dimension, it has reach outside of Derry. But Derry is its baby, right? Its feeding place. So when it's afraid that the losers are coming back and it's fearing for the first time, it's stacking the deck. And it knows Henry already. So it talks to him through the moon. Tom's already on his way to beat the shit out of Audra because he wants to teach her a lesson. Because she bested him.
You mean Bev?
Yeah, in Bev, right.
Yeah, they look alike.
And Audra's going back Audra's going to Derry because Bill's her partner. So she goes to Derry to find Bill. But once they're both in Derry, that's when it takes hold. So I don't think it actually called them from England and, wherever Beverly was. But I don't think it can't. I just think it just feeding on Derry. And when the people enter Derry, now they're in its grasp.
Yeah, because Tom was evil enough to do all the stuff he did, which was disgusting.
Yeah.
What he did to her feminist friend
Yeah.
that he hated.
Yeah.
That was awful. Yeah.
So, but Derry is an evil town because of it.
There are no redeemable characters, I feel, that are adults. Mike's parents, I don't remember thinking them as bad. But not that I stood out as good, but I don't remember anything that made me think, oh, you fucking shitty parents just like the rest of them. Where Eddie, obviously, I feel like there's some emotional incest, the Munchausen by proxy.
Yeah.
That really irritated me, the pharmacist. Like the sick way he told him. You mind if I go into this?
Please do.
Go for it.
The sick way he let him know. It wasn't even like he was helping him.
No.
It was almost like he was showing off how clever he was. That he gave him a placebo and then didn't fully explain it. So this kid, a 12-year-old, what is he supposed to do with that information? He just thinks he's crazy. He didn't help him in any way.
I'm glad you said that. I felt a sliver of that, and I didn't know if I could articulate it, or I don't know if I was going off course. I just wasn't confident in what to do with that thought. So I'm glad you feel the same way.
Well, I try to think of all the adults and what they did. And like you brought up Bev's mom. And, as a mother, if your kid has going through something like that, or you suspect that, you don't just ask one question and then dismiss it. If you think that about your husband, like, I just don't understand that. To me, the evil, that kind of evil, the evil that you ignore when you know something is you sense something wrong, you don't investigate it. And then they saw outright evil and people didn't do anything. Bill's parents get a little bit of a pass because, I've known families where they lose a child and then the other children suffer because of it. Because grief is really hard to control. We all go through grief. It manifests differently for all of us. The father wanted to pack up Georgie's room. The mother wanted it to be a shrine. They ignored Bill's grief.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which, in a way, again, having personal experience with grief, and then with children, you're told children kind of lead the way with grief. Like, you don't bring it up too much. But it's like they didn't check in on him at all. And then when Bill's mom comes home, and she is, I can't remember why, but I don't think she explained it. She got scared of them as a group. It's the first time she met all the losers. And then she said they scared her.
Mm-hmm.
And she wanted to get away from them.
Yep.
And it's like, you're their mom. Why aren't you? And you already lost one son. Why aren't you investigating that?
Yeah.
Like, you don't even know what they're up to. Which was more normal that time to not know what your kids were doing all day. But I feel like if you live in the town of Derry, if you live in the town of Derry, you would be a little bit more worried. Like Ben's mom, at least, was worried about him.
Yeah.
And I feel like she was good. I get that she was making him overeat, but that was her expression of love. And I don't think that's evil. Yeah, I don't think she wanted him fat. I think that she was just trying to provide for him.
Right. With the losers, you have this kind of split where you have parents that are not necessarily doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Either they're ignorant, which I think that's what Ben's mom was. She just doesn't understand what she's doing is wrong and painful and detrimental to her kid. You have Bill's parents who are just in their own zone. And then you have Stan's parents who never meet. And then Mike's parents who seem to be on the up and up. Richie's parents seem to be decent.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Bev and Eddie, who's are psychopathic monsters.
And I think that's why they're the ones with the worst in the future or the present time. Yeah, they're repeating the cycles that you guys have brought up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how much they don't remember they remember some things from their childhood. Is that why they repeat it? I couldn't tell if they are repeating those cycles because they couldn't remember their childhood, but now that doesn't make sense because Eddie knows he's marrying his mother. Like, he consciously makes that choice.
Yeah, he acknowledges that in a weird,
Yeah.
It's just really
But
weird.
he's like, he doesn't like his mother and his wife are pretty much identical in this picture. I'm like, that is weird to notice that.
Ugh.
But all of them, what they share, if they don't have necessarily shared trauma at home, they do have shared trauma from the town and from the bullies and then it terrorizing them. So they also share like internal stuff. Like Stan is a Jew. So he feels, as an outsider. Mike is black. He definitely feels like an outsider. Bev is from the poor part of town. Bill stutters. Eddie has asthma. Ben is fat. And then Richie has, glasses and is a smartass. So they all have their own little things that cause them cause them trouble.
They're all kind of ostracized.
Yeah, exactly. The perfect way of saying it. And that's what brings them together to form the Losers Club. And this just popped into my head. What I found very adorable is when Beverly frees herself from Henry Bowers by like kicking him in the balls to the point where I think one of his testicles explodes because he starts bleeding and spits on his face and runs away.
That's what happened?
Yeah.
I just thought he was bleeding. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, she kicked him pretty damn hard.
You got to kick him pretty hard to achieve that.
And the same thing, she did the same thing to Tom because she hits him in the testicles with a belt. So those kind of repeating cycles are awesome. But when she goes to their clubhouse and they're hiding with Ben, and this is Ben's crush, and he gets to like hug her and hold her, and he's almost dying from his heart almost exploding because he's hugging his crush. But then he's also like making noises and making fun of whoever was above, Belch Huggins, making stupid comments above, and they're snickering and they're laughing and there's this danger. That scene always stood out to me as very, I'm very fond of that scene.
I loved that smoke out scene.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's so weird.
The ceremony.
Yeah, I loved it.
Ritual, whatever it's called.
Chud.
Bless
Ritual
you.
of Chud. Thank you. I think we can end the convo on Derry with this quote. This is something Eddie says as he drives home. He thinks to himself, he goes, home is the place where you have to finally face the thing in the dark. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to be like a rephrase of an old saying, home is the place where you go and they have to take you in. But these guys are going to face their fears, face it for the last time. This is them at the final confrontation of both their trauma from their parents, from town, from stuff they experienced just because who they were, whether they're Jewish, black, or have glasses. Have asthma and glasses, yeah.
Yeah.
This is King bring them back to Derry for a final confrontation because Derry, unlike maybe for other people who are either ambivalent, agnostic, or participatory with it, right? Derry is not a comforting sanctuary for the losers. It's a place where they faced terrible stuff as children, and now they're back to fight it. Now, something else I want to talk about, it's on the style of writing, is the epistolatory aspect of the book. So the use of quotes, news clippings, literary materials. For example, the narrator of it uses an unpublished book by Mike Hanlon. And you get the interludes there, you get those news clippings, you had History of Derry. It's all interwoven together to make a more realistic book, maybe. But definitely, I think, to give life to characters and events. So I enjoyed those a lot. Jonathan, I think you said...
I didn't really notice. They just didn't stick out to me.
But you said you listened to Audible, because on the Audible, I would not have picked up on the news clippings, but I had already read it.
Yeah.
I couldn't listen to it ahead of time, because then it would be a little boring to read.
Mm-hmm.
But I was reading ahead, and I'm now into Audible. I was not into it before until like a year or two ago.
To the Losers Club.
Yeah, I do enjoy it. I think I might definitely listen to it again more than, because I've already reread quite a bit. The stuff I think I missed. I know I missed a lot more. There's so many details on a book that's like 1,200 pages. I liked that kind of writing. I've always liked that. I know I've seen it other places, but as a kid, I would have found this really cool because it would be like, oh, this is so creative way to tell a story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was done like very seamlessly. I couldn't figure out how often King did it, where he would end a part. I don't know if they were chapters. And the last thing would be and then it would pick up the sentence in the next part. But he didn't consistently do it. And I was like, is it when he's going back and forth in time?
Yep. You got it. Sometimes a sentence, let's say, Eddie, don't go to 1957. And then you go to 1958, and it's Beverly continuing the same sentence, but it's telling Eddie to the bathroom or whatever. I'm making it up.
I love that, though.
But really in both scenes, Eddie's supposedly going to the bathroom, but it's that repeating of cycles. That's why I called it a figure eight. The story is actually a figure eight. You picked up on it just right, Jess. And I love that too.
And the figure eight thing is why the ending I'm not thrilled with.
You didn't like the
Let's talk
endings?
about that.
Well,
Let's talk about that.
Because I want to know more what happened to the losers after. Like,
Oh,
did they continue the cycle? Did Eddie still marry his mom?
Eddie's dead.
Oh, not Eddie. Sorry, not Eddie. Shoot, that was not.
Does Eddie come back to life?
Did that? You know how many times I forgot? You know how many times I forgot that Eddie wasn't Richie? Because I would once he stopped doing like, if Richie isn't doing the voices, Richie and Eddie are very, even though they're nothing alike. And
Yeah.
I like Eddie a lot because I kind of like he's the little one. He's a little one, right?
Yeah.
He's a younger one. He's a little bit more of the weaker one with, because he's told he's weak by his mother.
Right.
And he rises to the occasion. So I do like that he kind of dies
Mm-hmm.
for it because it makes him more brave.
Yeah, that's what I
it's
said.
a redemptive.
Absolutely.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
Yeah.
It's a
But how's
redemptive thing.
Myra doing?
Myra's either still having her conniption fit or has driven Al Pacino off the bridge.
Or she felt
or
maybe she
both.
got Al Pacino.
Or, yeah. Or she married Al Pacino. Yeah.
Probably
Most
not.
far-fetched one. But like
Yeah.
Bev and Ben, did anything happen with them? Like, I mean, what happened?
Yeah.
But I get like, and they lose their memory, but that's how it does come the full circle. But then it's like, does that resolve the grief and the trauma for all of them? We don't know.
We don't know.
Probably not.
I kind of liked it because a bittersweet ending.
Yeah.
Because Richie knows that he won't really talk to Mike.
Mhm.
And he said, just write me. And that's kind of him saying, okay, if you write me, it's going to be more real, but don't call me, write me instead. And then Bill's forgetting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Mike's forgetting stuff. And everybody, Ben and Bev, move away to Nebraska. And they're kind of separated from the losers already. So everybody gets a good ending except Stan because, he commits suicide.
I don't think Mike
So
got a good ending. So everyone was successful before they came back as an adult, and Mike's a librarian. And they even make a point like he doesn't make any money. It's just like Mike didn't really get a great ending here.
But he's alive. He has a new sense of purpose, according to the book. So he's now looking forward to life now that this part of his life is over.
But he's gonna forget.
Will
He said all
Oh,
the
he's
all the
ready
memories
to,
are forgetting.
yeah.
So like how does he have a better life if he has something to look forward to when he's gonna forget what happened and he's now just this like poor librarian in a podunk town?
But he has his book.
But it's fading. He says
The book's
in the
fading?
yeah, the book,
I
the
missed that.
writing's fading, and then he acknowledges like I could keep reproducing this and rewriting it so it stays fresh, but it
Oh,
becomes
yeah.
a moot point because or not moot. What did he say? A futile effort because it's fading as if it was there for 50 years in 3 or 4 days. I don't feel like Mike gets a great ending.
And since the town, all the historical, do they remember anything in Derry? Does anyone remember the evil in Derry?
Well, now that the evil is gone,
Is destroyed.
the town really becomes podunk because it was somewhat successful because it kept it successful. Because even though you had Bev, who was poor, you had Keen, who had, the drugstore, he was pretty well off. You had a vibrant small town. By vibrant, I mean things were happening.
Mhm.
Maybe it wasn't like the best small town to live in at all, but things were happening. And now that this cataclysmic earthquake and flood destroyed everything, people came in from outside going, hey, let's rebuild. And soon they were like, you know what? Nah, forget this place. Let's not rebuild and leave. So after it leaves, Derry literally falls apart and kind of figuratively falls apart.
I love that too. I love how it falls apart too.
Yeah. And irrespective of what the librarian gets, the rest of them get good endings. Even in Eddie's death, it's redemptive. He gets to play the hero.
Mm-hmm.
And Richie goes back to his job. Bev and Ben get together. Bill gets Audra out of the coma or whatever she's in. She's catatonic. And it ends on them on Silver kissing and moving forward in life.
Because I feel like they say they kind of weren't in love with each other.
No, they were. The book made it sound like Bill and Audra had the most stable life outside of all the losers. Because even Mike, had his issues. He was poor. Bev was with Tom. Eddie, Myra, Stan was just kind of moseying along through life. Although he was very successful and he loved his wife and she loved him, but true stability was Bill, because I think it takes Bill longer than anybody to remember. Stan remembers right away and takes himself out of the equation. And he even mentions stuff like, oh, the turtle couldn't help us.
Like his wife mentioned
his wife
a lot of times him going dark. So I did think maybe he knew. And then, when they get to seeing it and they're like, oh, I wish I had killed myself too. Which made me kind of, because a little bit, I don't know what it is. Like when someone commits suicide, it's like, oh, what a cop out for the story. But that's part of why one of the things I went back into reread was Stan, because it was hard to feel the same about him because he wasn't in the whole story or in the present time.
But I think the POV thing that I mentioned earlier, because we get Stan's POV from his wife's perspective and how Stan gave her stability and got her out of, the life she was living that she wasn't happy with, and now she is respected. She, the people that she associates with no longer look down on her because she's Jewish. She's made it. And for Jews or for any minority, getting out of that, situation where you're constantly oppressed and you make it to a place where you're financially safe and physically safe and you're away from everything that is oppressive from the outside world. And then the person who kind of holds the key to all that, kills himself. That is traumatic. So from one perspective, seeing her going up the stairs, there's 6 pages of her going up the stairs before she discovers her husband's body. I think that adds to the terror that Stan felt too. He automatically takes himself out and you're like, well, what the hell happened here? Then you have his wife explaining it all. And there's a little bit of a window darkly because you don't get Stanley's head, you get his wife's head. Mm-hmm. But that, I believe, adds to the creepiness and the terror of what it has done.
Especially because he offed so fast, like right after.
Yeah.
He was like watching TV for a little bit and it's like, I think I'm going to take a bath at 7 p.m.
Yep.
Yeah. I feel like we should have seen more terror from him, though, in the childhood scene where they're killing it, because I didn't feel like he
rationalized it.
Like, it didn't feel real. It didn't feel real that he, like, that was his first decision.
I think he rationalized it, everything, because he was like, the scientist, the rational one of the group. So he rationalized everything in what he thought was a scientific approach to it. And it stayed with him. Because he didn't deal with it, it stayed with him throughout his whole life. And then when it finally came to fruition, I guess, and it was his idea to make the pact anyway. But when it was his time to come back, he just was like, you know what, I'm done. I can't do it. Boom.
But that's I think why it feels weird, because he's the one who initiated the pact.
Right.
Was there foreshadowing, like in the movie? Again, I fell asleep in the movie. There was foreshadowing that he wasn't going to come back. I know there was foreshadowing that more people were going to die.
Yeah. I think there was foreshadowing in the book because Bill remembers Stan, when holding the Coke bottle, the edge of the Coke bottle, to cut their hands. I think Stan makes a joke about cutting his wrist instead. And then he goes, now let's make the pact.
I have to go back and check.
I'm paraphrasing
a little. I
a
want to see that, yeah.
I believe you're right. I believe there's foreshadowing. So you get Stan's suicide, but then you get this little clip of Stan thinking about suicide even as a kid because of what it did to his mind, right? Or facing it, what that event did to his mind. Excuse me. It's just a really thick book, literally and figuratively. So some of these things you can only pick up on if people tell you, or you do a second read through when you're looking for them.
Right.
That's why I think it's a really fun book to reread.
In the end, see, the part that I would definitely read would be the not the last interlude, the fourth, or the step where you get into the microcosm.
Yeah.
And then once they're in the tunnels and they go back and forth so much, you know what? I was probably just stoned. I had trouble keeping track. I was like, "Are they kids again?" And I'm like, "It stands there, they're kids." But like, it was hard for me to keep track of that. I probably would, like Andrew Keene, my favorite character. it's
Ooh,
hard to
nice
tell what
segue.
Yeah, entering my favorite character, and that's the plot hole.
Tell us about that.
It's totally off topic. Okay.
No. Tell us about the plot hole.
It's not a plot hole. Shoot, it's just a tiny technicality. I feel oversold.
Still,
that.
Same.
no.
He
That's-
has 2 ounces of weed in his armpit. What? 2 ounces of weed hidden in his arm. I can't fit it in my bra. So how can he fit it in his armpit? And he was just walking around.
Remind me and the audience of where you're talking about again, and like
It's
context.
when the and I love this, the apocalypse for Derry. Woman dies on the toilet reading a Banana Republic catalog. That is like a nightmare. The woman in the shower, they think she gets decapitated by something with the sewer, and then the doctor dies, keeping to his walk, and then it's Andrew Keene, and I was like, oh no, he's stoned. He's gonna die horribly. And then that quote, God favors drunk small children and the cataclysmically stoned. I love that. And he's the one who, what did he say? Oh, great special effects. He's like shouting at what's happening because he's like, am I hallucinating?
Yeah.
He's shouting at the stuff, and then he's like, Steven Spielberg, eat your heart out.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
I love a dumb pothead character. But the 2 ounces, you cannot fit that under your armpit. It's just something, even vacuum sealed.
No, I get it. I've seen documentaries on weed.
Oh, you should documentaries.
Real life IRL documentaries. No, you're right. I didn't even think about that when I heard that, but yes,
it took me right out of the end. Couldn't enjoy the rest. Not really. It's when I went back to read the quotes. I saw that and I was like, that's not right. I thought he was hiding like a joint in his armpit or something. Like how Ben was
like
hiding the matches.
Brick of cocaine.
Yeah, way too heavy. He needs like a backpack.
Oh, that's funny. That's hilarious. So now that you guys have both read Stephen King, Jonathan, you read short stories because I made you.
I also read that first book of Dark Tower years ago.
Oh, okay. Well, then this question is for you, Jess.
Just exempted myself. Okay, fair enough.
Would you read another Stephen King book?
Yes. I haven't listened to the sample yet to see if I don't hate the voice of the person for Salem's Lot. Because you recommended that.
Yep.
I have read Carrie, but it was a long time ago. And the movie, the original Carrie, the movie, I loved so much as a kid. Also did their voices because of the movie Superstar. And if you had seen that, where Molly, what's her name? I can't remember her name. She's an old SNL Carrie, and then why I read the book. But I used to annoy my mother by acting out Carrie. Like the voice. I couldn't do Piper Laurie. But I don't really remember it because I know the book is, the way he writes it is so different than how the movie is. I do have a short story book where I've read some of the short stories. So I should reread that one because it's already in my house. And I know he was also, isn't The Stand considered one of his best?
Yeah, people always go back between it and The Stand as his kind of magnum opus.
Yeah. But I remember he brought that up, one of them, and on writing, and he was like, I wrote it in like 88, or he wrote it in the 80s, and he had written so many cents. He wants to keep writing, thinking we're their best book. It was like so long
behind
ago.
them. Yeah.
Oh, I've read Dr. Sleep in The Shining. I forgot about that. And I loved Dr. Sleep. Are we going to talk about his writing now?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Open it up.
About like controversy in this, because it kind of goes off from Survivor when I said what would be good literature. But Stephen King, by critics, the snobby critic, is not considered, a great writer. Why?
He's not? What do they say?
What do they say, Slava? Like specifically? I think they say like the supernatural. I know the supernatural element.
That's very predictable writing, and the endings are always, kind of clunky. He gets a lot of crap for clunky endings.
Also, I read criticism, even for us, I forgot about that. The kids, someone said they weren't realistic because they were like too good, overly idealistic characters, but they really aren't. So I don't agree with that criticism. It's only as a group that they're like that. They're not perfect characters.
Yeah.
But they are, I think they stand out because it's a fight of good and evil. They're going to be more good because it makes sense in the story.
Yeah.
I read that as a criticism. Sometimes I just think it's because you don't have to sit and think that, I could say the horror is used as a literary device. So I think, but I guess you don't have to sit there and like decode the symbolism. Maybe he's not long-winded enough, not pretentious enough. Not. I always think of that part of what's that show? My daughter was Arrested Development, where they're like deep is good. People won't understand it. Yeah, people won't understand it, so they'll say they like it. And I do think that about some books, where I'm like, did you really like it? Like, I've never been able to finish. I've only tried to finish one David Foster Wallace book. But like, I was like, oh, this is awful. Like, I know it's supposed to be amazing, but I don't find it amazing. I don't care if other people think it's amazing. I'm not going to, if it's not that, I'm too old. I'm 36. I'm 36 now. I'm too old to waste that much time on something I hate after like 100 pages. And like I said, I was reading something where someone was a book snob and he said something, I'm definitely paraphrasing. He goes, oh, my son used to like King, but after you read all those things, I don't know if I already said it on here. And one of them was Dennis Johnson. And I was like, I'm reading him now. But all the other people he read, I wouldn't consider them like I don't know if they're going to stand the test of time. And that's ultimately what I think. We won't know how he's going to be viewed in the future because Dickens was considered a superficial novelist and that, what did they say? That he was contributing to the downfall of literature. I'm not sure if Henry James said that.
That's funny.
And then J.D. Salinger for The Catcher in the Rye, although I can see how an adult might feel that way about The Catcher in the Rye, because it's not my favorite J.D. Salinger book. Brady and Zoe is.
But I feel like everybody who is in their time, they just get downplayed by the modern day critics, and then after that, they die and people go, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I found an LA Review of Books article on Stephen King's writing. And this is a critic saying, well, he called it pulp in the beginning.
Yeah.
And he called it generic. And then this is what when he finally gets to the bottom of it in his 2,000-word essay on King, he says, what is it about King's writing that appeals to so many people? Clearly, King's readers, many of them whom seem to get hooked on him while they're adolescents, don't care that his sentences are dull. There must be something in the narrative arc or in the nature of King's characters that these readers can't resist. My sense is that King appeals to the aggrieved adolescent, or the aggrieved nerdy adolescent, or the aggrieved nerdy adult who believes that people can be divided into bad and good. In the latter, of course, include the aggrieved adolescent adult. A reader who would rather not consider the proposition that we are all, each of us, nice, good people awash with problems and entirely capable of evil. King coddles his readers, all nice, good, ordinary, likable people, just like the heroes of his book, though this doesn't completely explain why these readers are so tolerant of the bloat in these novels, why they will let King go on for a couple of 100 pages about some matter that has no vital connection to the subject of the book.
I feel like that's the one who said the thing about Dennis Johnson.
Yeah, but I think that the snobs literally, well, not literally, but how do they make money, right? How do snobs make money? Add revenue from whatever site they're on for their home company, and then the home company pays them money. So you write something that's clickbaity, that gets people up in arms, they go back to the article, and they see more ads. Do they actually feel that way?
And when you shit on things, you can feel superior.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
We're going to talk about the gay stuff?
Let's get into it.
Not the right sentence.
Me?
Yeah, you, Slava.
Oh.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
You want to slide right in?
That's another great sentence.
Phrasing.
Okay.
Double entendre. For between Richie and Eddie, which is another reason I get them. I think their names are what I get mixed up. Richie.
Can I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Yeah.
This guy who wrote this review in 2012 is an author, and he wrote a book in 2000, and I went on Amazon. It has 1 rating that's 5 stars.
And it's his friend.
Probably. So, you know who you are.
Maybe no one got it.
Yeah. Oof.
Anyway, sorry, Jess. Continue. Gay stuff.
So I guess when I was looking at criticism, so you do see something, about, I don't think they said queer baiting in that, but how there's an obvious relationship between Eddie and Richie. And I was like, no, I thought they just did that for the movie because, we do diversity for the sake of diversity, even if it doesn't make sense, which the book already has so much diversity. I mean, in the sense that it's a small town and, King already sheds the light on homophobia and actual, someone killed someone for being gay. So I feel like he didn't shy away from having a gay character in the book, talking about racism in the time the book was set and also in the past, because the book goes so much, has a lot of history involved.
Yep.
That I don't think he would have been afraid to make a character like that. But also, I don't think anything of those scenes seemed gay. And even the ones that people point out specific things, like Eddie reaches for his inhaler after talking about, you said Andrew Mellon?
Yeah, Andrew Mellon, yep.
But Andrew Mellon had asthma. So he reached for, and Eddie had fake asthma, maybe. And then he reached for his inhaler and he heard asthma. And that apparently the internet's like, oh, that's proof he's gay. And then the leper, I think, tries to get sexual favors from him.
Yeah.
And they're like, but why?
Or offer sexual favors, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know if he offered or wanted him to.
And both, I think.
Okay. I didn't want to say the actual word. I feel like that's too explicit. But I was like, well, how would that not be anyone's fear? No one wants that.
Right.
I don't think it was
Nobody
some
wants
coded.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. It would have been just as bad for
even the people
characters.
who don't have houses don't want that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe one guy who writes for the LA Review of Books, maybe he wants that. But
maybe, because I feel like that sometimes gets you a prize.
Yeah.
Certain gay undertones. And one of the examples was him eating a popsicle. They're like, it's a phallic-shaped popsicle, more so than the other phallic-shaped popsicles. All popsicles are phallic-shaped.
This is just more evidence to me that people are bored and they don't have anything interesting going on in their lives, so they need to just tear down something that someone else created.
Yeah.
I mentioned a similar situation with a different movie who somebody went on about all the gay overtones of the completely non-gay scene. And the guy responding to the commenter said, how porn-addled and touch-starved you must be to take something that's just intimacy between two people and sexualize it, irrespective of whether it's heterosexual or homosexual or whatever. So I think a lot of these people, I'm not accusing them of being, porn-addled, but the point is that they're bored, and we do live in somewhat of a sexualized culture, even though sex is sacred, and we look at it, like Jonathan said in a previous episode, with some awe, right? But at the same time, we're almost blinded to that, and it's kind of a free-for-all in the sense that, now I'm not talking about like free love or anything like that, but a free-for-all where logic is not applied. You just vomit an idea over here, you vomit an idea over here, you vomit an idea over here. They're all contradictory, but somehow we're all just supposed to be okay with that.
And we forget, I feel like there's because I think we're over-sexualized in our culture, that we forget about other types of intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like, one of my closest relationships is with a male friend. It's not sexual, but it's with a male friend. And I've had many male friends. So, I don't know. Why can't, it's like a bromance.
Yeah, there's been plenty of women who I've been close to that I did not want to sleep with. That's it. You were just a person in front of me. You happen to be a female. And I might consider you beautiful or attractive like I would a cousin or a sister.
Yeah.
Yes. I think, unless there's any final thoughts, that's kind of the episode. We hit most of our notes and talked about a lot of additional side quests. But, final a moment for final thoughts from anyone.
Didn't blank out yet till now. I have no final thoughts.
Yeah, I don't think I have any final thoughts. I think this was an excellent episode. We covered what we wanted to cover. And I think Jess added a lot of value to the episode.
Thank you.
Yeah. Love having you on, Jess.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Thank you so much.
It's always good to get your opinion on stuff for these books we're reading. Next up, we have Rule of Two by Drew Karpyshyn, book 2 of the Darth Bane series, and we will have Matt back on as a guest. So we're looking forward to going back into a Star War to find out what happens to Darth Bane.
Indeed.
You want to do the outro, Slava?
Sure. All right, you literary adventurers. Hit that subscribe button.
Come on, Big Bill.
Oh,
He puts his hands against the post just in case he sees the
He
ghost.
thrusts his fists against the post and still
No
insists he sees the
thrusting.
ghost.
No,
It's not
no
thrust?
thrusting. I might be thrusting, but thrusting just
thrust.
seems too explicit.
It's thrusting. Yeah,
Thrust is
Jonathan's
We
just-
just talked
porn
about
addled.
Yeah, okay.
All right, you literary. And this is going to be a thing.
Come on,
You know what?
Spencer.
Thank you for coming on the show, Jess. Audience, thank you for being with us. Make sure to hit that subscribe. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a side quest. I'm out. I'm done. This was a
Bye.
thing.
Oh.